later than what you, which I am sure of, are going to calculate with very great accuracy. Billy says shit. This will change certain important factors, which the child is to bring along, right? And what will it be anyway? I mean, what gender will it be? Semyaza says it will be a boy. That I will grant you, telling you that, but everything else you have to calculate yourself. Concerning the certain factors addressed by you, it will, unfortunately, be as you say, that another time, very many things will be changed in such a way that these cannot come into effect in such way as what should be the case in providence and determination. This, however, we are unable to change, and you, too, won't be able to do anything in this regard. Billy says then I could only wait once again and twiddle my thumbs. That is, indeed, still to be coped with, that also in this case, again only a caesarean section can lead to birth. That's a bit much. Such a birth makes me even more insecure than what a normal birth already does. Semyaza says you are very worried. Sure, it won't go without a surgical intervention, but there is no reason for concern there. Billy says but why does it always have to be like that? Damn it again. This means, once again, that I must keep my mouth shut for many months, for I can't tell the girl in advance in what manner the child will come into the world. Through that, I would only evoke unrest and, above all, severe psychological difficulties and anxiety as well as fear. Semyaza says so it would be, which is why you really have to be silent about these things for the time being. Billy says once again, that gives me pleasant times, and I'm looking forward to it already. Semyaza says I understand you perfectly, and I also feel a certain sorrow inside of me for you. It's probably better if we don't speak of this anymore for now. I also still have other matters to discuss with you, apart from me just talking with you about these things. Billy says of course, but it still makes me wonder whether the child will suffer any damage due to the birth delay, whether it will have an abnormality. Semyaza says no, you can be unconcerned about that. The only damage will be that certain capabilities must be developed in him in an especially hard self-effort, with the help of you all. Normally, the prerequisites would have been more easily given, therefore, the descendant would have learned this on his own and without help from outside. Billy says is that really the entire damage? Semyaza says surely. Billy says then I am calmed. Semyaza says good, then I can speak again of other things you told me in the course of our conversation that you have calculated some dates of the future. Billy says right. Semyaza says at the same time, we also spoke of the head of state of Yugoslavia, of his demise. Concerning him, have you calculated the exact time of death and the date of his going out of this sphere? Billy says I have. Here, I've written everything down on this slip of paper. At the same time, it's just strange that I was able to calculate two different dates. The first is the 24th of February, 1980, the time for this is 10:10 p.m. The second date is the 4th of May, 1980, and the time for this is 3:04 p.m. and 47 seconds. The fact that there are now two dates, I don't understand. Semyaza says your calculations are very well right, and the one date, like the other one, is of correctness. Tito, the Yugoslavian dictator, will unofficially conclude his physical life on the date of the 24th of February, 1980, or rather, he should do this at this point in time. Truthfully, however, it will be like it was at that time with Generalissimo Francesco Franco in Spain, that he will have an agonizing death, because the doctors, with all their arts and machines, will keep him alive for so long, until death officially occurs on the 4th of May, 1980. As of the 24th of February, 1980, however, it will be the case for Tito that he will be set out of his state mighty function, without the possibility that he can do even only the least in his governmental business. Unofficially, he will, thus, already be dead as of this date. Billy says now I understand. Semyaza says have you also even made any calculations regarding Persia, that is Iran? Billy says no. Semyaza says then I will still explain a few events to you, which can be of importance for you. Around the turn of the year 1980, fanatical and Khomeini enslaved student elements will overtake the American embassy in Tehran and will take all of the embassy personnel as hostages. This will lead to serious difficulties in the domestic and foreign policy of America, as well as to very inconsiderate and rather childish actions of the American president, who, among other things, will allow an attempt to free the hostages, which will be doomed for failure from the very beginning, to be carried out. The victims here will only be the prisoners in the American embassy, but also around a dozen American families in the USA, because with this liberation command of insanity of Carter for the hostages, around 12 American soldiers will lose their lives through a misfortune. Due to the irrationality, incompetence, and confusion of the American president, the action with the aircraft unfit for this purpose will be started. The largest part of these machines will be destroyed due to their own unfitness, together with approximately 12 human lives of the volunteer command. These events will still further stir up the crisis already going on for many months until then between the Americans and Iran, and it also won't find an end so soon after this time. This is especially so, because also in the interior of the country of Persia, various power groups supply concerns, problems, and acts of war to the revolutionary state, and because the Islamic leader Ayatollah Khomeini, who has fallen to insanity, will have beaten the majority of the Iranian people into the fanaticism of insanity serviceable to him. This will ultimately lead to the fact that the first outside of country, external acts of terrorism will find their beginning, so namely first in England, where the Iranian embassy will likewise be occupied and hostages will be taken another time. But also this doing will bring about its bad consequences. Billy says, do you mean with your words from just now, that this Khomeini has, already now, fallen to insanity? Semyaza says yes, that is the sense of my words. He still isn't in the full stage, but this will already soon be the case. Billy says then one couldn't even talk sensibly with the guy anymore? Semyaza says no. Billy says what I still wanted to ask, to where, then, will the Shah and his Shah band disappear? Semyaza says President Carter of America will commit the inexcusable mistake that he grants the fugitives temporary asylum, which will also contribute to the effects in the embassy in Tehran. Billy says you speak of a temporary asylum, where will the guy then go after that, this super murderous knave? Semyaza says if I would tell you everything, then this would take too long. But this much I will explain, that Pale Levi has already been suffering from cancer for quite some time and, therefore, will be treated in America. After that, his next place of refuge will be Panama, and then Egypt, where he will undergo further medical treatments. Billy says his end, in any case, will be inglorious. Semyaza says his end will be very agonizing, but let that be enough with these explanations for this case. Billy says as you wish. Do you still have other news? Semyaza says surely, also for your country. Billy says you mean Switzerland? What should be great there? I have only calculated that a lot will happen in Switzerland as well. In Bern, there will be murder and mayhem, because there, an embassy will be stormed. Also Geneva and Zurich won't remain spared from terror and anarchy enterprises. In addition, criminal activity will horribly take the upper hand, and in Zurich, one morning shortly after the turn of the year 1980, it will come to a major bank robbery attempt, during which 2 gangsters and a policeman will be shot. Furthermore, starting from 1980, Switzerland will be littered in its entire area by rampant murders, and political difficulties will enter into appearance, which will have washed themselves and which will be as they have never been known before in Switzerland. Nuclear power plants will be attacked by radical groups, whereby severe destructions of the same are also calculable. In the Bundesrat Federal Council itself in the upcoming time starting from 1980, there will arise internal difficulties and differences, which will lead to dubious instances of maladministration and will evoke certain changes in the government itself. And, which I would have nearly forgotten, in the month of April, 1980, Switzerland will, for the first time, receive an official state visit from England by a royal couple. Elizabeth and Philip will visit Switzerland. Semyaza says you have calculated very much. Billy says I have, yes, but you know, nevertheless, that some things would still interest me, for which I simply didn't have the time to calculate. Semyaza says sure, what do you want to know, then? Billy says you are still surely able to remember well, what was said about the trimmings at Tito's death by that prophecy, which I had received years ago. Semyaza says you speak of that prophecy. Billy says certainly. It was transmitted to me at that time that at the time of Tito's death, a quake would roll through the seas. Semyaza says sure, but I don't understand what you want to aim at with your question. Billy says that is quite simple. I see something in this, that it must be more than just a simple sea quake. The way I understand it, this sea quake must only be the actual origin for something very much worse. I imagine that I understand something of prophecies, thus I am able to recognize certain things from them which remain hidden to the layman. Semyaza says I know that this is so, and you have also supposed correctly. Billy says good, then first of all, tell me where this sea quake will take place and what will come after that. This quake is only a precursor, right? Semyaza says unfortunately yes, and it will be in the ocean west of America. Billy says aha, now I already understand a little more. Am I right in accepting that this quake precursor is associated with the Andreas fault? Semyaza says yes. Billy says aha, then this can also mean that somewhere in America, a volcano will suddenly go off, right? Semyaza says you are very perceptive. Yes, it is so. A volcano lying dormant for many decades will suddenly break out, in order to bring death and destruction over the vast country. It will be Mount St. Helens, which will destroy very much life and very much land under itself. The sea quake arising around the time of Tito's death won't be very strong, so it won't move the human beings of the earth. But this quake will be a bad omen for the imminent outbreak of the St. Helens volcano, which stands in connection with the Andreas Fault, which itself extends from the high north of Western America until deep into the south of the country. The scientists will first make no connection at all with the small sea quake to the volcanic eruption. They will also suppose after the first time that the volcano will soon come to rest again. But they will be mistaken in this because they won't be looking for a direct connection from it to the Andreas Fault. Already about 10 days after the outbreak, however, some scientists will think about the events and recognize that the Andreas Fault plays a significant role in these events. At this time, it will, however, already be the case that in the area of San Francisco, severe earthquakes occur. And these will first bring the scientists to the fact that the Andreas Fault is in play. At the same time, think of the prophecy that was given to you on the 2nd of February, 1976. There is talk in this of the fact that San Francisco will be destroyed. With the outbreak of the St. Helens volcano, the time becomes complete, in which the beginning of the end assumes its actual beginning. About this, it stands word for word in the prophecy brought into verse form by you, and the city of the fault becomes totally buried. Billy says I know, but I haven't learned the prophecy by heart. Semyaza says of course not, but for that, I can recite it to you by heart. Billy says really? Then do that at once. Semyaza says as you wish. Under smoking, greyish-black, conical mountains, very many hellfires become fatally smouldering. They liquefy sand and earth and rock, deep in the earth, within and without sunshine. Deep in the earth's interior, hot magma masses bubble, greedily reaching upward and onto the earth. Exploding, they hurl their fire upwards, through the throat of the mountain, the gate of fire. Crashing, they spew out their glowing masses, destroying humans, animals, plants, oh horror. And even the seas become churned deep down. The earth has already felt this for so very long. Angry volcanic fires tear up the image of the world, and all over, great cries of horror shrill. But it's still not enough when it burns, for the earthquake rushes ahead and behind, destroying, roaring, it destroys everything, and no one is able to soothe the calamity. The volcanic fires race and the earthquakes, all around, unwaveringly destroying life after life. It lets new islands arise in the seas, while humans on sinking lands plead. The time of the first destruction is already there, in the south of the land of the old native inhabitants of America. This land is badly affected in the coming time, as well as the land where black humans hope. Also Europe doesn't remain spared from the evil, for also there, under the land, lives hell. From the land of the boot, one will speak very sadly, and also from the lands with the boon of earth gold. Also the land with the cherry blossom becomes shaken, and the city of the fault becomes totally buried. Also the people and land of the lion's sword suffer, and the star in the half-moon doesn't become avoided. Also the land of the gods becomes maliciously affected, the lands of the dragon and of the hope of peace, when the fires of